Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and I am got my legend, the legend Cody Lowry here. Someone that takes on a life of unique perspective, executing bold ideas, making others laugh, and being ever mindful of the little guy. Past divisional president of the Intermark Group, a full-service advertising, digital, and branding agency located in Birmingham, Alabama. Cody is a refreshing change of pace and a welcome addition to any corporate boardroom looking for innovative, realistic, out-of-the-box ideas and solutions. I mean, this dude is a legend. I already said that. You have to pick up his book. There will be a book giveaway, so listen to the end. You know, the schmooze, what they should teach at Harvard Business School. And the stories in there about getting to meet the president of the United States, being chosen to carry the torch in a relay race, getting a Super Bowl ring, in a freaking autographed baseball from the Pope, which is just, it just blows me away. This man is the most interesting man in the world. He should have been on those Dos Equis commercials. And Mr. Lowry, thank you so much for coming on. Please introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. But first, what's your favorite color and why?
Blue.
Blue. Why blue?
I look good in all colors, but blue especially.
You are one handsome double, man. Everything's in your color wheel. If you're watching a Vimeo or YouTube, he's rocking the yellow blazer and the blue button down. It's rocking, man. So I got to get to the roots of you. I know that we're both from the Mitten, Michigan, on our younger days and whatnot. I thought that was really cool that we aligned that way. But I'd love to get to your younger days, man, and where you were and how you're leveling up now, making people laugh, but putting the lessons within the laughter.
Absolutely. Well, it started early, and as you just mentioned, I was from Michigan, a blue blood family, but we weren't blue bloods very long. Our family moved down to Fort Lauderdale when I was about 5, and within a 7-year period, a 7-mile radius, we moved 32 times. My dad was good at a lot of things. Paying the rent wasn't one of them. Oh, but I started schmoozing at a very early age, at age 11, Scott. And my dad left, and my mom, she was a debutante from Detroit. She never worked a day in her life. And now all of a sudden she's got 2 jobs. And I started selling papers for the Miami News. Now there's 3 papers in South Florida. There's the Miami Herald, there's the Fort Lauderdale News, and then there's the Miami News, which really is, you know, it's a stretch to say it's a newspaper. It was more like a fish wrapper. Okay.
Right.
But, you know, people ask me, how did I start schmoozing? I started schmoozing at age 11. And I would have fun. My beat was the Sunrise Shopping Center. It's called the Galleria now. Yeah. And I used to walk the mall. Paper, sir, paper, ma'am. The Blue Street edition. It's the latest. And most people didn't give a damn what I had. They weren't going to buy a paper. So I had to engage them, Scott. And if Scott came by and I said, Miami News, sir, and you walked past me, I'd say, sir, would you buy a paper if I told you where you got your shoes, what state you were born in, how many birthdays you've had? Most people would turn around and, you know, for 5 cents, they would bite. I'd say, you got your shoes on your feet. You were born in the state of infancy, and you've only had one birthday the day you were born. So I tell people that's where I started schmoozing, and I learned a lot of things selling papers. I learned how to build relationships. I learned how to have a sense of humor. I learned hardship, and that's another story that we may be able to get into later on. But I learned overcoming adversity, you know, coming from the family that I did, where, you know, my favorite saint was Saint DePaul, and he was my favorite saint because he was always there for Christmas or Thanksgiving with a big box of food, you know.
Yeah.
And when you move around like we did, we actually lived in 2 places twice. The lights were always being turned off. You know, in high school, I used to hitchhike to school. So, you know, it was a time for me where I appreciate more than I can tell you what I learned selling newspapers.
Wow. Well, in the schmooze, where did that come from, though, Mr. Schmooze there?
So, you know what? Mr. Schmooze, or the name of the book, Schmooze, What They Should Teach in Harvard Business School. Nito Quibane, president of High Point University, wrote the foreword of the book. And he said, today we live in the most connected society in the history of the world, and yet we're more disconnected than ever before.
Yes.
And schmooze, I've always been a schmoozer. I've been called a schmoozer. And I know I'm an Irish Catholic, and it's a Yiddish word, but, you know, for me, somehow it fits. And so when I was writing the book, and you mentioned the sizzle, setting up a meeting with the president of the United States, week, getting a baseball signed by the Pope, carrying the torch, Olympic torch relay, getting a Super Bowl ring from a gifted NFL Hall of Fame coach, auditioning for Saturday Night Live within a 24-hour period.
Yes.
That's the sizzle. That gets them in the book. That makes Alan Dershowitz write a nice foreword to your book. What the book's really about is it's about hearkening back the day we looked people in the eye, we greeted them with a smile, our word was our bond, and our relevancy wasn't based on likes and looks on social. And so it's a real powerful business book that's been embraced by a large companies around the country, and and making it part of their leadership program.
Sure.
But it's about overcoming adversity. It's about a winning smile. It's about building relationships that last. And a good portion of the book, and thank you for reading it, I talked about building.
You do. And it was like I was sitting here talking to you when I read it. Okay. That's what it felt like. You were just sharing stories with me. And that's the kind of book, like I'm a really kind of a parable guy or a fable guy. Like that's what I'm writing right now, is a business fable. And I like that because there's a lot of conversations that happen between human beings in it. But it was like, you're just like, we're having a little Johnny Walker, and you're kind of going through, and I'm spitting some of it out because I'm laughing so hard. And then I've also gripping the glass because you went through some kind of adversity, in your life as too. What a part of that adversity, what really stands out to you? And what was the biggest lesson from your most adversarial moment that you think that you've experienced?
Well, first of all, I've got to give my mother credit. And I just casually mentioned she was a debutante.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, she there's a high school in Detroit named after her father, Frank Cody High School, which you may remember.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He was the first president of Wayne State University. She was
that's royalty up there, bro.
Yeah.
Royalty.
I mean, when she was growing up, I mean, she literally hung out with the Ford kids and the Fisher kids and what have you.
Yeah.
And then we met dear old Emery at a camp, and they got married in a fever, and bingo, 4 kids later, they were in Florida. My dad was blowing any inheritance he had, any inheritance my mom had. And so when I look at my situation back then, what's the biggest lesson I learned? I think it's that you can overcome almost anything. And there's people that have stories that are horrific, and a lot more, dramatic than mine. But there's a Japanese proverb, Scott, that I love. And it says, fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Yes, sir.
And I learned that. And you got to learn that in life. And I try to teach people in the book to do just that. There's nobody out there in the podcast land, or that's viewing on YouTube or reading the book, that hasn't had to overcome adversity. And it's how you handle adversity when it comes knocking that's important.
Very 100% true across the board there, Cody. Do you ever work with people one-on-one?
Yes, but it's very private. But to answer your question, yeah.
Okay, so maybe if you're in a discovery period of maybe those discussions, is there any secret sauce that you might use with your experience, if you don't mind sharing, to maybe help them identify that initial blind spot they're up against?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned the secret sauce, and if I could just pivot a moment.
Yeah, man.
A big part of the book is, building relationships. You build a relationship, you get the client to trust you, and you never let them down. And what's so very, very important, and most people aren't aware of this, what's paramount is that first meeting, that first 60 seconds. They're already making a value judgment, whether they like Scott or they don't like Scott. Okay. Yeah. I want to do business with Scott, or I don't care if I ever do business with Scott. And so, and I give a pretty good example, and I'll share that with you. But I had my own advertising agency for 25 years. And then I was, as you mentioned, president of Intermark Group. But I had a call from a Toyota dealer in North Carolina, and all the Toyota dealers were getting together. They were having a little meeting. I think that's how he described it. They're having it at the Grove Park Inn. If you've ever been to Asheville, Grove Park Inn is kind of a nice property. It's a spa now. But anyway, I get there and I go into this hall, and I'm meeting the dealers and talking to them. And when you and I first met, I mean, I'm asking you all kinds of questions about yourself. I want to dive deep so I get to know you. So I want to build that relationship. And I do what I did, I did what I do, naturally. And I started building relationships with these guys. Then, they invite me to dinner. And one of the dealers looks over at me and he said, he said, who are you going to bring with you? And I thought that was an odd question, or who did I bring with me? And I said, I didn't bring anybody with me. Well, Scott, this was a presentation for the whole account. It was a $5 million account, 1993. It's a lot of money today for a local ad guy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a ton then. Saatchi and Saatchi, $1 billion agency, they had the account. And then they invited 4 other agencies to pitch. And I said, I must have made a mistake because I didn't realize this was a presentation. And my stomach is turning. Go up to my room, and honestly, Scott, I'm just thinking about calling gentleman Jerry, who is president of the association, and say, hey, listen, I got to back off. I'm not prepared for this. And, maybe next time. And then I started thinking about it. I was ready for this. I've been doing this for, 10 years.
Yeah.
I had the best creative reel of anybody. I didn't have any spec creative, but I knew my creative strategy. I didn't know anything about the Charlotte market, but I knew our media strategy. And I said, what the hell? I'm gonna go for this thing. So we get down and in the morning, and I'm meeting the other agencies, and they're just dismissing me. They got storyboards and beautiful girls and 3-piece suits and parting gifts and all that kind of stuff. And like, who is this guy? But in any event, one thing I'll tell your listeners, and when you're making an advertising presentation, you either want to be first or you want to be last. Well,
Absolutely.
they put me on last. And these dealers, they make a decision very, very quickly. And so I was last, and they called me in. And when I walked in, it was Cody. Hey, man, that was fun last night. Hey, how you doing? Make sure to see me when you get back down to see my brother down in Fort Lauderdale. And now it's like old home week. I'm with these guys, right?
Yeah.
I built the relationship the night before. I only had enough, but they knew me. I was on town with most of them, right? So I wasn't a stranger, and they got a sense of who I was. And how can I trust this guy? So I got up there. I did my pitch. It was about 45 minutes. I had like I said, I had just done what we called a sizzle reel with your really hottest creative. So I had that with me. And when I left the room, they applauded, and I walked out. And about 30 minutes later, Italian guy, Bertolami, he comes up, Cody, guys want to see you. I thought they were going to throw me in the trunk or something. So,
fish swimming with the fish time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Go in, they close the door, and they all get up and they applaud. I won the business. And you know why I won the business? There was creative that was as good as mine. There was media strategy. That was
relationships.
There were people. They didn't have a chance because Mr. Schmooze was schmoozing.
Yeah, I love that. And I can see it. Unfortunately, I haven't met you in person yet. Well, we're going to make that a change to that. But like, I'm a big believer that you are a believer that God or your creator gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Like, you really lean in and you get curious. Like, I would say if I had to give you a superpower, it'd be curiosity, because when you're working that room, you're curious. My biggest compliment I can get at a networking event where I'm pressing flesh is when I walk away from them, they're like, what the hell does that guy do? Right? Like, they don't know anything about me. And I'm that guy that will go out to my car, and I have a stack of thank you notes in there. I'll handwrite one. I'll dump it in the mail at my townhouse before I even come in. And that's my version of schmoozing. Right. And that's fantastic. So let me ask you something then, Cody, have you seen the movie Back to the Future?
Not like yesterday, but
no, I feel you. Okay, let's go back to the double deuce, the 22-year-old Cody. What kind of knowledge nuggets would you drop on him? Not to change anything, because your journey is pretty freaking awesome, right? But to maybe shorten a learning curve, blast through or level up, maybe just a little bit quicker.
So 22, wow, I was engaged. I was working at a car dealership, which is a funny story. And, I guess to your point, I've always been curious, and one of the first things I did when I got started in the automobile business was reach out to the other superstars, if you will. But I must tell you, it wasn't an easy first week for sure. I graduated from college. I worked my way through college. I was driving a Corvair that used more oil than gasoline. And my brother, who lived down in South Florida, not too far from you, there was a big automobile franchise called King Oldsmobile. And I couldn't find a job in my major, which was advertising. He said, "Why don't you try selling cars?" And I said, "There's no way I'm going to sell cars." So, there's nothing about that sounded good, until he said, "Well, you can make a few bucks, and then, you get a demo." And I said, "A demo? What's a demo?" He said, "You get a brand new car to drive." I said, "You're kidding." Well, that's all I need to hear. I went down to Penny's, and with the last, few bucks I had in my pocket, I bought a pair of baby blue pants. I bought a white shirt and a paisley tie. And, driving around, I noticed that these guys are pretty flashy dressers. And I drove around looking at all the dealerships. So Cody, and I wasn't suffering from low self-esteem, would be able to pick out the dealership that I was going to work at. I just felt like I would be doing them a favor, right? So I go in there and I asked for the guy in charge, and they said, "Mr. Vanderbo down at the end office," and talk to him. So I go in there, and Bucky looks like a caricature of a car salesman out of the late 70s, right?
Right.
And I mean, the big lapels and the sprayed up hair and the, whatever. You ever walk into a room, Scott, and the chemistry just isn't there? You probably have it. You're kind of an outgoing guy, but I can tell you at 22, I was a little nervous, and Bucky, he didn't think much of me. He was very distracted. And I told him, I said, "Listen, I just graduated from college." I said, and I was smoking him a little bit here, Scott. I said, "I want to get in the car business, and maybe one day I'll own a dealership," and blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Why don't you do me a favor?" He said, "Why don't you come on back in about 6 weeks? Let's see. We already hired a couple people, Cody." Like, okay. I got up from where I was sitting. I looked down at him, and I said, "You just made the biggest mistake you've ever made in your life." And I said it like that, in that tone. I said, "Because you don't have a salesperson I can't outsell. Thank you very much." And I walked out. There was another guy sitting in the corner, Manny Fernandez, a Cuban guy. He had a glass eye and a limp, and he was another character, right? But he comes running up, Cody, man, I ain't never heard nobody talk to Bucky that way. I said, "Well, Bucky just made a big mistake." He said, "Oh, call me today at 3. Let me see what I can do." So I called him at 3, and he said, "You start in the morning." I said, "Great." I couldn't even believe it. I'm there the next morning. I think I'm going to see him. He doesn't come on till 12, but they've instructed me to go see Bucky, just the guy I want to see, right? So I get down to his office. "Good morning, Mr. Vanderbo." I sit down. He doesn't acknowledge me. He's doing the papers. And I'm really getting a little nervous now and looking around. And I thought I'll break the ice. I said, "Mr. Vanderbo," I said, "do you have a training program?" And now he grins from ear to ear, probably remembering the threat the day before.
Biggest mistake, right?
He said, "Let me ask you a question." He said, "Can you figure out 4% sales tax?" I said, "Yeah, I think I can figure that out." He said, "Well, then get out on the point." He screamed at me. I can't remember being screamed at like that. But anyway, I got out on the point, didn't know where it was. That month, I was salesman of the month.
Wow.
So I think what to your question, at 22, I was full of what and vinegar.
Piss and vinegar, yeah, man.
Yeah, I figured that I could, conquer the world, and that's where it all started. And I learned an awful lot, and eventually I learned an awful lot from Bucky.
Love that. For someone that you might not even have thought you would. That's amazing. So how do you want your dash remembered then? That little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, your life date and death date. How do you want your dash remembered? How do you want people to look back and say, Cody Lowry?
First of all, I don't need to be identified by schmooze. And I don't care how many zeros somebody has under their name. Their real treasure is their family and their friends. I have 11 grandkids. I have 4 of my own. I've got friends that, I'd take a bullet for. And so I would say one thing that I'd like people to remember, that I was kind. I looked out for the little guy. And there's several stories in the book that speak to that. And, that I was, pretty good egg, pretty good schmoozer too.
Yeah, good all around human being, most definitely. So, Schmooze, what do you think people misunderstand the most about you?
The depth, maybe, that there's somebody else besides a flashy yellow coat.
Ooh,
And then
unpack that for me. Go deeper.
Well, no, I think sometimes people look at you and when you come into a room, and I'm not a wallflower, right? So I can pretty much take over. I mean, not too long ago, I was in this great big room it was this guy's 70th birthday. And I mean, this MC guy wasn't going anywhere. And somebody said, "Hey, Cody, can you help out?" So I got the microphone, and no problem. We gave him a good 70th birthday party. But I think when I walk, I think sometimes I intimidate because of my personality.
Sure.
But once people get to know me, I think they're kind of glad they do.
Yeah, I absolutely. I feel like we're kind of brothers with different mothers in a sense, where I get the kind of the same thing, but more with my size. Like I'm 6'1", go 240. I'm pretty well put together, but I'm that guy that walks in and gets hugs. Like, hey, what's up? And I'm always over the left shoulder, because then you're heart to heart, right? And that's how I break the ice with people. Like I give a hug and I give it over the left shoulder. I'm like, nope, we got to go the other side, heart to heart. And that's the way that I have learned. You really kind of break the ice, unless you're from the East Coast and stuff. They're like, don't touch me.
Yeah.
Hey, so what is Cody's definition of a life well lived?
I think my definition of a life well lived is to, there's nothing we can do about yesterday, but be very positive about today and tomorrow, and make sure that maybe you can make a difference in somebody's life.
Love that. I love that. And that's what life is really about, because I mean, like, even with my coaching clients I have locally in South Florida, I'll take them into their car. One, I kind of want to see how they keep their car, because you can tell a lot about a person how they keep their car. But two, I sit there and I put them in the driver's seat and I say, see this little thing here, this little rearview mirror, it's small for a reason. It's happened. What's happened is not what's happening. And that, a lot of people get stuck there, and they have, it's a great place to learn from and visit, right? And then you have this windshield, huge windshield. Oh shit, scary. Where am I going? But you can't get anywhere unless you freaking put your seatbelt on, hit the ignition, put it in gear, and go. And on these dashboards now is a thing called the GPS. And that's what I am to them, right? So I really have them. So every time they get in their car, they're like, Ferg, man, it's like I think of you every time we get in the car. And it really helps kind of with a coaching tool, right? Time to shine today, Podcast Varsity Squad. We are back. And Cody, we're definitely going to meet 100%. I'm going to make it a point in my lifetime while we're breathing air to actually meet you and break some bread and have a nice afternoon sometime. And we'll talk about some of these questions, maybe 15, 20 minutes each. But within this leveling up lightning round, you got 5 seconds with no explanations. They can all be answered that way. You ready to level up?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. Cody, what is the best leveling up advice you've ever received?
Be frugal.
Yes. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Get up early, leave late.
Love it. Love it. So, Cody, you see me walking down the street or maybe at an event or whatnot, and other than you say, man, Fergie looks like he's in his doldrums a little bit. Other than, your book, Schmooze, what they should teach at Harvard Business School, what book might you hand me to level up?
Probably 1776.
Really? That's one. Okay. Excellent.
I think everybody ought to read it, and you come away with a great regard for our first president.
Love it. 76. Awesome. What's your most commonly, if any, emoji that you use when you text?
Thumbs up.
Awesome. Nicknames growing up?
Code Commode.
Commode. I love it. So any hidden talent and or superpower that you have that nobody really knows about?
Well, I do about 100 impressions, but a lot of people know about that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've got one of those.
I think curiosity, but I'll just say we'll go with that. So chess, checkers, or Monopoly?
Chess.
Love it. Headline for your life.
Meet a great guy.
Love it. Any superstitions that you kind of carry around with you?
I don't.
Beautiful. Go-to ice cream flavor.
Vanilla.
Beautiful.
Kind of boring. No.
No, I'm right there with you, dude. Right there with you. So there's a sandwich called the Code Commode Schmooze. Build that sandwich for me. What's on it?
Oh man, we've got pastrami, we got corned beef, we got bologna, we got jalapeno peppers, we got big gob of mayonnaise and mustard, little salad dressing.
That's so funny you said that, because I'm actually meeting somebody at a Jewish deli today
Yeah.
for lunch. And he's like, dude, we're going to have a corned beef pastrami sandwich. Best you're going to have. So it's crazy you just said that. Favorite charity and or organization like to give your time or money to?
St. Jude. In fact, my MC a lot of.
That's awesome, Cody.
A lot of functions. Yeah.
That's awesome for the kids. Beautiful. Last question. You can elaborate a little bit on this one, but what's the best decade of music? 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place. But man, it's gotta be the 60s, huh?
Yeah. Was that Heartbreak Hotel? Was that the 50s actually, though?
Well, I mean,
I'll say the 50s. I love it's funny growing up.
I like, all right, I'll do this. Late 50s, early 60s.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. All right, Mr. Schmooze, how can we find you, my friend?
You can find me, go to mrschmooze.com, mrschmooze.com. That's my website, and it's got everything you need to know about Cody Lowry, including a lot of his relationships.
Love it. Love it. And Squad, he's authored a book that I believe came out in mid 2020,
right in the middle of April. Yeah
in of this that thing called coronavirus, and it was a great read, and it got recommended to me by my good friend and also Cody's good friend Brian Ahern, and I read it, and fantastic book. But can you dig a little bit into you writing, the mindset you had behind writing this book, and then what you've actually talked about the lessons you wanted to pay forward with this, but just maybe what was going through your mind while you were authoring this freaking awesome book?
So when I was president, thank you. When I was president of the agency in Birmingham, I still had a home in Florida, and so I was by myself many nights, and and it's good to be able to sit there and just kind of think about your life and what you did and what you're still doing and endeavoring to do. Mm-hmm. And I thought, my God, with all of the things that have happened to me, and I, we just really scratched the surface. A real funny story is teeing it up at Augusta National, and how that all happened, and that story. But so I just started, making notes, and the next thing you know, it's turning into a book, and next thing I do, I get a publisher and get some pretty high level people to read it and like it, including Alan Dershowitz, including Hal Steinbrenner of the Yankees, including Tim Gannon, founder of Outback Restaurants, and then my good friend Nito Quibane. Have you ever met Nito?
I have not.
If your people out there ever get an opportunity, he's president of High Point University. We met back in 1979. I could hardly understand him. He had just come over from, the old country. But he is an incredible person. He's won the Horatio Alger Award along with Oprah Winfrey and Schultz of Starbucks fame. And he is a guy that got a hold of the book, and I went to see him at the university, and he goes, Cody, this is amazing, because he's written 6 books himself. Right. And I was going to have him, endorse it. He said, no, I think I'd like to write the foreword. And I said, so. Yeah, he was special forward. I hope people get a chance not to read the foreword, but really go to YouTube and Google Nito Quibane.
Yes, sir.
Great American too.
Love it. It's such a fun read, and just kind of the lessons that I just picked up. I'm trying to think. I think I read it in 21, like mid 21. It's actually not that long. It's only I believe it's less than 150 pages total. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And Cody, you know what, Squad? I was going to do a 2-book. I'm going to do a 5-book giveaway to the first, say 5 people that put in either schmooze or code commode. I know it's funny, but I don't care if it's in my Pinterest feed. I don't care if it's Instagram. I don't care if you text it to 561-440-3830. I'll get the copy out to you, and it'll be on Time to Shine today's dime. And Cody, if you could, please leave me with our squad with one last knowledge nugget we can take with us, internalize, and take action on.
Smile. It's free, it's cheap, and you'll live longer.
Love it. It's true. So squad, I have pages. I'm having pages of notes just from this little conversation. It's hard kind of just to put it in a synopsis, but Cody's someone that I immensely respect. Started schmoozing at age 11. He come from a kind of a blue blood family, and then kind of married into kind of a royalty family. And then the family just kind of decided to spend the money, which put a work ethic within the schmooze that he knew he had to level up on a daily basis. So he started learning relationships. He found out the hardship, the humor through schmoozing, and how he could put that together into the artwork that he is today. That you can overcome, he reminds us, everything. He brought up the Chinese proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8, or like we like to say, fail forward, or we either win or learn. We never really lose as long as we're always progressing. Really big to Cody is building the relationships, the client trust, and never let them down. That's kind of the golden rule with all business. Cody loves to dive deep with questions, and I really realized that he's a guy that really, even when I was asking him questions, he listens with his neck, not just his ears, but he really leans in to the question and he really contemplates his answer. And I absolutely love and immensely respect that. His real treasure to Cody is his family and friends. Will be remembered. It was someone that was kind and looked out for the little guy. I mean, this dude does it for the intention, not the attention. And I really love it. He's going to get the attention because of the way he carries himself. He's planting trees daily that he's never going to sit in the shade of. And that's somebody, again, I respect a ton. And then there's nothing we can do about yesterday. Be positive about today, and also project out positivity about tomorrow, and surround yourself with that tribe that's going to help you get there. And lastly, super important, smile. Cody said it's free, it's cheap, and you live longer. And Cody, thanks so much for coming on the Time to Shine Today podcast. And you level up your health, you level up your wealth, you're humble, yet you're hungry. You earned your varsity squad letter here at Time to Shine Today. Thanks so much for coming on, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much.
You bet. Have a great day.